Jon Moxley shocking return with Roman Reigns YouTube script. The wrestling world just got turned upside down, and if you think you know what happened on SmackDown, you're dead wrong. What we witnessed wasn't just a surprise return, it was a calculated declaration of war that has completely shattered everything we thought we knew about brand loyalty, family bonds, and the very foundation of professional wrestling as we know it. Jon Moxley, the man who supposedly burned every bridge with WWE, who publicly trashed the company, who swore he'd never set foot in a WWE ring again, just showed up on SmackDown like he owns the place. But here's the part that'll make your blood boil: he didn't come alone, and he didn't come to make peace. He came with Roman Reigns by his side, ready to absolutely destroy the Vision in what can only be described as the most shocking alliance in wrestling history. Now, before you start typing fake news in the comments, let me ask you this: when was the last time WWE pulled off something this controversial, this unexpected, that it literally broke the internet within minutes of happening? The answer is never, because what transpired on that SmackDown stage wasn't just entertainment, it was a seismic shift that's going to reshape the entire landscape of sports entertainment forever. Picture this scene if you can. Roman Reigns is in the middle of the ring, microphone in hand, addressing the Vision's recent dominance and their stranglehold on SmackDown. The crowd is hanging on every word, expecting another typical Roman promo about acknowledging him as the tribal chief. Then suddenly, the lights cut out completely. Dead silence. You could hear a pin drop in that arena. When those lights flickered back on, there he was, Jon Moxley, standing right behind Roman Reigns with that same unhinged look in his eyes that made him the most feared man in AEW. But instead of attacking Roman, instead of the chaos we all expected, these two men, these former Shield brothers who took completely different paths after their faction imploded, were standing united. The crowd didn't know whether to cheer or riot. The announcers were speechless. Social media exploded with fans claiming it had to be fake, others saying they were witnessing history, and everyone demanding answers. But the most shocking part? This alliance makes perfect sense when you dig deeper into the psychology behind it. Think about it logically for just 1 second. Roman Reigns has been carrying WWE on his back for years, facing criticism, dealing with the pressure of being the guy, while his former Shield brother Dean Ambrose, now Jon Moxley, was out there in AEW talking about how WWE held him back, how the company stifled his creativity, how he found himself again after leaving. But here's what the critics and the haters don't understand: success breeds respect, even from your harshest critics. Moxley watched from the outside as Roman evolved from the company's golden boy into a legitimate main event superstar who could carry any storyline, any feud, any match to the next level. Meanwhile, the Vision has been running roughshod over SmackDown, disrespecting everything that Roman built, everything that the Bloodline represented. The Vision, this mysterious faction that's been systematically dismantling every established star on the blue brand, they made one critical mistake. They underestimated the bond between Shield brothers. They thought that because Moxley left WWE on bad terms, because he'd been critical of the company's creative direction, that he'd never come back to help his former brother-in-arms. Wrong. What they failed to realize is that family loyalty runs deeper than corporate politics, deeper than creative differences, deeper than any contract dispute or backstage drama. When Roman needed backup against an enemy that threatened to destroy everything he'd built, Moxley answered the call, putting aside years of differences for something bigger than both of them. The moment those two men stood side by side in that ring, staring down the Vision's representatives who had come to interrupt Roman's promo, you could feel the electricity in the air. This wasn't just about settling scores or evening odds, this was about sending a message that some lines should never be crossed. But let's talk about what this really means for the wrestling landscape. For months, fans have been begging for something genuinely surprising, something that would make them feel like anything could happen in WWE again. The predictability had set in, the storylines felt stale, and even the most dedicated fans were starting to tune out. Then bam! Moxley's music hits, and suddenly every single person watching realizes they have absolutely no idea what's going to happen next. That's the magic of professional wrestling at its finest, that moment when reality and storyline blur together so seamlessly that even the smartest fans can't tell where one ends and the other begins. Here's a question for you hardcore wrestling fans out there: do you think Moxley's return is a one-time appearance, or is this the beginning of a longer storyline that could see him actually wrestling in WWE again? Drop your predictions in the comments, because this could go in so many different directions. The confrontation with the Vision wasn't just a typical wrestling segment either. These aren't your average heel faction members we're talking about. The Vision has been presented as something different, something more dangerous than your typical bad guys. They're methodical, they're intelligent, and they've been one step ahead of every single superstar who's tried to stop them. That's what made Moxley's appearance so perfectly timed and so strategically brilliant. The Vision thinks they can predict everything, thinks they can manipulate every situation to their advantage. But how do you plan for the return of a man who officially doesn't even work for your company? How do you strategize against someone who's supposed to be competing for your biggest rival? The look on the Vision's faces when Moxley walked out was priceless. For the first time since they arrived on SmackDown, they looked genuinely surprised, genuinely concerned about what was happening. These are characters who have been portrayed as having contingencies for everything, backup plans for their backup plans, and suddenly they're faced with a variable they never could have accounted for. Roman's reaction was equally telling. You could see in his eyes that he wasn't just grateful for the backup, he was energized by having his Shield brother back by his side. Remember, Roman Reigns is at his absolute best when he's working with partners he trusts completely, when he doesn't have to watch his back because he knows someone else is doing it for him. The Shield was special not just because of their individual talents, but because of their chemistry, their unspoken communication, their ability to function as one unit even when they were technically three separate people. Seeing even just a glimpse of that magic returning with Moxley and Roman standing together brought back memories of why that faction was so special in the first place. Now let's address the elephant in the room that everyone's thinking about but nobody wants to say out loud. What does this mean for AEW? Jon Moxley has been one of their top stars, one of their most prominent former WWE wrestlers who helped legitimize their company as real competition. If he's appearing on WWE television, even if it's just for special appearances, that changes the entire dynamic between the two companies. Some fans are already speculating that this could be the beginning of some kind of working relationship between WWE and AEW, similar to what we've seen with other promotions in the past. Others think this is WWE making a power move, showing that they can bring back anyone they want, whenever they want, regardless of where they're currently working. But here's another angle that's even more intriguing. What if this isn't about company politics at all? What if this is purely about the story, about giving fans something they genuinely didn't see coming, about proving that in professional wrestling, anything really can happen if the stars align properly? The timing of this whole situation is absolutely perfect from a storytelling perspective. Roman has been dealing with the Vision's mind games for weeks, slowly losing ground, watching them pick apart his allies one by one. He needed something to change the momentum, needed something to shift the power dynamic back in his favor. Enter Jon Moxley, unpredictable, dangerous, and completely immune to the Vision's psychological warfare tactics because he doesn't play by the same rules as everyone else. He's not worried about his WWE career because technically he doesn't have one. He's not concerned about corporate politics because he's already proven he can succeed elsewhere. He's the perfect wild card in this situation. The segment itself was masterfully executed too. Instead of just having Moxley show up and immediately start throwing hands, they let the tension build. They gave us those long, uncomfortable moments where nobody in the arena knew what was about to happen. The cameras caught every single facial expression, every subtle gesture, every micro-reaction from everyone involved. When Moxley finally grabbed a microphone and started speaking, you could hear a pin drop in that arena. His words were carefully chosen, deliberately ambiguous about his future plans, but crystal clear about his intentions regarding the Vision. He didn't make any promises about sticking around long-term, but he made it absolutely clear that he wouldn't stand by and watch his former brother get dismantled by a group of manipulative outsiders. The promo work from both Roman and Moxley was absolutely phenomenal. These are two men who have completely different styles on the microphone, Roman with his measured, intense delivery that builds to explosive moments, and Moxley with his raw, unfiltered passion that can shift from casual conversation to barely contained rage in seconds. Together, they created this perfect storm of intensity that had the entire arena on the edge of their seats. Quick question for the comments section: which Shield member do you think had the best character development after the group split? Roman with his evolution into the tribal chief, Seth with his various championship runs and character changes, or Dean/Moxley with his complete reinvention in AEW? The Vision's response to this unexpected alliance was equally compelling. Instead of immediately backing down or calling for backup, they stood their ground, clearly trying to process this new information and figure out how to adapt their strategy. These characters have been built up as master manipulators, and watching them have to improvise in real time added a layer of authenticity to the whole segment. But the most telling moment came when Roman and Moxley exchanged that look, you know the one I'm talking about. It was barely a second, but it conveyed years of history, brotherhood, mutual respect, and shared purpose. That's the kind of moment that reminds you why professional wrestling can be such powerful storytelling when it's done right. The crowd's reaction throughout this entire segment was absolutely electric. You had people cheering for the reunion, others shocked into silence, some still trying to figure out if what they were seeing was real or part of an elaborate work. That confusion, that genuine uncertainty about what's real and what's storyline, is wrestling at its absolute best. From a business perspective, this appearance has already generated more buzz for WWE than they've had in months. Social media went absolutely crazy, wrestling news sites crashed from traffic, and fans who haven't watched in years are suddenly tuning in again to see what happens next. That's the power of genuine surprise in an era where everything gets leaked or spoiled weeks in advance. The ripple effects of this appearance are going to be felt for months, maybe even years. Other AEW wrestlers are going to be asked about it in interviews. WWE storylines are going to have to be adjusted to account for this new variable. Fans are going to be speculating about every surprise appearance going forward, wondering if another major name might show up unexpectedly. But beyond all the business implications and the internet buzz, what made this segment truly special was the emotional core of it. Strip away all the corporate politics and contract negotiations and insider knowledge, and what you're left with is a simple story about family, loyalty, and standing up for what's right when it matters most. That's what connects with audiences on a deeper level than any amount of spectacular moves or elaborate production values. When fans can believe in the relationships between characters, when they can invest emotionally in their struggles and triumphs, that's when professional wrestling transcends entertainment and becomes something more meaningful. The confrontation with the Vision wasn't resolved in that segment, and that's exactly how it should be. This isn't the kind of storyline that gets wrapped up in one night. This is the beginning of something bigger, something that could define both Roman's character and potentially bring one of wrestling's most compelling performers back to where his career began. Here's another question for the longtime fans: do you remember the last time a surprise return or appearance genuinely shocked you this much? When was the last time WWE managed to keep something this big completely secret until it happened live on television? The technical aspects of how they pulled this off are almost as impressive as the story itself. In an era where every backstage detail gets reported immediately, where fans analyze every social media post for hidden clues, somehow WWE managed to keep Jon Moxley's appearance completely under wraps until it happened live. That level of secrecy suggests this was planned at the very highest levels of the company, with only a handful of people knowing about it in advance. It also suggests that both WWE and potentially AEW were willing to put aside business considerations to give fans something truly special and unexpected. The implications for future storytelling are enormous. If WWE can pull off something like this once, what else might they have planned? Which other former stars might be willing to make surprise appearances? How many other sacred cows of wrestling conventional wisdom are they willing to challenge? But perhaps most importantly, this appearance proves that there's still magic in professional wrestling when everyone involved is committed to serving the story first and worrying about everything else second. When performers are willing to put aside personal differences and business considerations to create something memorable for the fans, that's when the art form reaches its highest potential. The segment ended with all parties staring each other down, tension thick in the air, nobody quite sure who was going to make the first move. It was the perfect cliffhanger, leaving fans desperate to see what happens next while giving everyone involved time to figure out exactly where this story goes from here. What we witnessed wasn't just a surprise appearance or a shocking return, it was a masterclass in how to create genuine moments of surprise and excitement in modern professional wrestling. It was proof that when the stars align properly, when everyone involved is committed to the story, and when companies are willing to take creative risks, wrestling can still deliver those goosebump moments that remind us why we fell in love with this crazy art form in the first place. So there you have it, Jon Moxley's shocking return alongside Roman Reigns to confront the Vision wasn't just another wrestling segment. It was a statement, a challenge, and potentially the beginning of a new chapter in WWE storytelling that could change everything we think we know about what's possible in professional wrestling today. The question now isn't whether this was a one-time appearance or the beginning of something bigger, the question is whether WWE will have the courage to follow through on the promise of this moment and deliver the kind of long-term storytelling that fans have been craving for years. Based on what we saw on SmackDown, they might just surprise us again.